trial shouldn't be your starting point of failure. Right? We need more people having the pharma-like rigor when developing solutions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clinically Rooted. I'm your co-host, Alone.
And I'm Milind.
And in this podcast, we're going to be interviewing experts in the nutraceutical and phytopharmaceutical industry who are setting the stage for evidence-backed formulations and how they're trying to make it truly efficacious. And for our first episode, we are interviewing the CEO of Hempstreet. Okay. Abhishek Mohan, you are to us one of the most influential figures in cannabis, bringing to life the first ever research to retail Ayurveda cannabis venture. And you have told us in the past how much pushback you had to face to keep Hempstreet alive and also continue fighting for solutions in women's wellness. But thankfully today you join us a few weeks after receiving ANVISA clearance from Brazil for Formulation Femme, which for everyone listening is the first ever cannabis-based solution for dysmenorrhea to undergo a successful clinical trial. Now the floor is all yours. Tell us how you feel.
Yeah, it feels great. And it's a pretty flattering description, I got to say. I think there's far more influential people in the industry, and I'm happy to play my part. It feels great. I think I've got to congratulate our partner, Entourage, Phytolab in Brazil. We've been working on this quite some time. I think the whole process has been half a decade of getting something that was an alternative to what women were kind of mix matching out there, and then getting it through the clinical validation process, phase 1, for complete clarity, please, and to be able to get it, into a regulated market like Brazil. I think there's the recreational wellness and all that is one thing, manufactured in the US and all, but I think this is very big for us and in general for where we come from, to have a regulated market accept us.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm sure to go through this level of rigor, you've had a significant amount of passion for the project and for women's wellness as a whole. So we're really curious to learn more about what got you into women's wellness in the first place.
So I think initially, I'd say we spoke to hundreds of doctors across India to figure out the ailments. I mean, pain, I would say general pain is the lazy option, right? I mean, you're not doing a lot of science if you're, just talking about general pain. So we realized when we spoke to a lot of doctors that dysmenorrhea was a huge, huge issue. And also that it was not being addressed directly by anything. So there was off-label use of, I can't mention the products because I don't have a big enough legal team to defend what's coming if I do. And you can see it all over the news. But that happened. So we decided we wanted to solve for it. And obviously being a father of 2 daughters now, since 5 years, I've been a dad. So I think it's even more, a lot of the pushing forward despite some real tough situations was been because of my 2 girls. I want them to not go through what women go through now when they grow up.
That's very insightful. And as you look for continuing to find solutions, where do you hope the industry to be in 5 years from now?
I think a lot more clinically backed. I think the idea is the more copious amounts of money have gone into the recreational industry. I mean, for obvious reasons, it's a huge market. But the idea that medical innovation will come out of the recreational industry is a fallacy. So I think we need more people having the pharma-like rigor when developing solutions. I think the cost of doing, you guys as a case example, I think the cost of producing high-quality data regarding efficacy, regarding absorption, has come down drastically from tens of millions of dollars to whatever it has. I think if there's a will to solve something medical, you do have avenues to at least do 5 times better than what the recreational industry is.
That makes sense. So, it seems like you're pointing out some ways that this industry is behind, and, regulations might be one of them, and you kind of touched on computational trials. Do you want to expand a little more on why you think that could bridge some gaps here?
Yes, absolutely. I think, computational trials, I would say, is, kind of a supplement to having finished your toxicology and your phase 1. But I think even before that, what you guys do, what we've done together, I think really is when you're at the drawing board, looking at an ailment, coming up with a formulation, the route to market should definitely have an element of technology that de-risks it, not just for you, but essentially for the patient, right? Nothing should even go into trials that could have a possibility of an adverse effect. I mean, trials shouldn't be your starting point of failure, right? When I say failure, it shouldn't be your first iteration. I think you should have iterated safety, absorption, form way before you go and give that to a human, right? I think that's what, like a negative effect, a minority negative effect in a trial is still a negative effect. Right? So I think, and a failed trial would mean that you've damaged a few people. So I think the responsible thing to do really is to utilize as much technology or whatever is available to you to create high quality data before touching a human being. And I think that's the important part. I mean, I think the failure and success of clinical trials is one thing, but at what cost are you taking it to the human level when you could have de-risked it further?
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that, the importance of de-risking your trials with some computational validation. And you explained kind of the risk of failing a clinical trial. We're obviously super grateful and happy that you're able to take this forward and you succeeded. But could you maybe put us in perspective, what would have happened if the clinical trial had failed, just so we could see like in a specific concrete case?
So I think we had a lot of real world data. So we understood there was some level of efficacy that was there. Obviously, one of the main things, I can say it now, was in our formulation was to be able to, when we built a global product, was to be able to reduce THC to the lowest level that we could, not remove it, right? And which we understood why much later after working with you guys. But I think the idea was the product that's out there now is a product that's, that is... a lot of intelligence has gone into that product. So in terms of our trial, one of the main things is we went through the process. We went through the toxicology. We went through, the preclinical. We went through phase 1 with an extremely strict ethics committee. I think one of the deals as a company, there's the commercial angle. Come on, who wouldn't love to control their trials? I think one of the anecdotes that I generally tell people is that if your trial completes on time, then your ethics committee is probably corrupt. So, our trial was supposed to be 6 months, but it ended up being 2 years because I completely handed over control to the ethics committee. And when we had to change dosing protocol, we restarted the trial. We didn't just continue on. So I think it takes a lot of discipline, and that discipline will make the difference between failure and success. Now, our idea that intoxication needed to be absolutely absent at the risk of failing a trial. So tomorrow, through some strange fate, if THC was the dominant player and we reduce it to, like you said, it's 1 mg or below now, it could have failed the trial, but we took that risk. So if it failed, we would have had to just go back to the drawing board and work on another product. It would have been damaging, probably fatal. And I can say it now that we're alive, but it would have been fatal because it was our flagship product.
And if you go into computational trials for a new product, what application of cannabis would you want it to be?
We've got 2 very, very good, products in preclinical. They have been, they've crossed the ocean for some testing. We've gotten some good results, but I want to keep that close to the chest right now because just like we kind of led the world with dysmenorrhea in terms of what we did, I think these 2 will be massive as well. I can tell you that they disproportionately affect women.
Sounds great. And in terms of all the learnings that you've taken from this process, what would you say is the one biggest insight for a cannabis founder that you wish you had back in 2019 when you were getting started on Hempstreet?
The technology didn't exist, right? What we did together, the understanding of systemic and non-systemic. It blows people's minds when I talk to them about it. It's how, with thorough understanding of the endocannabinoid system, right? Everybody and their uncle writes about it. The ability to deliver a localized effect while having an adaptogenic systemic effect. It's mind blowing because again, we cannot be the whole cannabis industry should not be limited by ingredients. You cannot formulate a product saying, how can CBD solve this? No, it should be, how can this disease be solved the best? Because I know if you dose people with, I don't want to take names, but if you dose people with 1 mg of CBD every day for 90 days, whatever, yeah, sure, they're going to sleep, but I don't know. I'm not one to say, but I would love to look at the before and afters on organs or whatever. I don't know. It could be fine, but I think brute forcing based on an ingredient is not the right way to do it. And then sometimes, like for example, sleep is something we looked at in the beginning, and I have seen some recreational products in the US, but they still leave you groggy the next day, and I don't think that's practical for everyday use, right? So I think sleep, while you think is an automatic solution, should be cannabis because THC, high THC, great, go to sleep. But I don't know if it achieves that level of depth. A lot of people wearing Oura rings should be able to tell me in the rec markets, but I would imagine that it doesn't achieve that kind of restorative sleep. So there's these thumb rules primarily coming out of the recreational wellness market, but that is not medical. I think intoxication of any form, while it can be enjoyed as a recreational product, does not form a medical. If you are to be a replacement, which a lot of people come out to say we're replacement for whatever pharma product, then you have to understand that side effect cannot apply.
That makes a lot of sense. And you touched on polyherbal as well as, the dangers of potentially giving 1 gram a day of CBD. EFSA set this provisional CBD limit of 2 mg a day for adults in February. Do you think that they're accidentally doing the industry a big favor in terms of polyherbal?
I think it'll push people to look at a non-monolithic solution. There is no God particle, right? There's probably a God particle in the Higgs boson, collider, but there is no God cannabinoid. There is no God single ingredient, to my knowledge. So I think the idea is how can you fine tune several, and again, regulators are not dumb, right? The idea is the right product eventually gets approved. Now, how you can stay alive till that happens, I'm glad we did. But the idea is how do you deliver a non-single ingredient dependent solution? And we've seen in Polyherbal there have been real world cases, a lot of anecdotal successes, but allow them to be rigorously tested. And now the technology exists where you can do that on an atomic level. Otherwise, the synergistic effect was always a point where the FDA would have an issue. And now last week, the FDA has granted breakthrough therapy status to, I forget, it's a full spectrum extract of cannabis, which means it's not single molecule. So the regulator has caught up, sort of. So I think the idea of this regulation, maybe 2 is low, maybe 2 is, whatever. I guess they were referring to taking it as a novel food or a supplement, right? Taking it every day. For an ailment or a prescription product, it might be higher. But again, it just allows for people to not brute force any ingredient. So I think it's a good thing. I think it allows for a debate, right? Go out and prove, right?
Yeah, and if microdosing becomes the standard in the future, what do you think the implications would be for women's wellness?
I think it's a requirement. We're a microdose product. The idea, again, is you need to deliver the best solution in a form that does not affect the quality of life. Now, if you're improving the quality of life by removing the symptoms of dysmenorrhea, but you're decreasing the quality of life by making them groggy at work or tired or missing work or being, kind of impaired in, whatever certain way, then it's not serving the purpose, right? So the idea is microdosing allows you to do both. We've seen that in our trial. And we've been able to kind of replicate that. You guys did that without any data from me, right? We kind of saw similar results. I think in terms of, systemic, non-systemic, which showed why intoxication didn't happen. So I think for women's health, the ability to now bring in clinically prove anecdotal solutions and also give them genuinely clinically backed solutions that are specifically tested to be for them, right? Not off-label.
Yeah, thanks for those insights, Abhishek. And, Let's take a step back. We've been talking about systemic, non-systemic a lot. Let's maybe clarify this a bit for some of the audience who might be more familiar with, just trying to deliver the maximum bioavailability. But there's really a nuance here with cannabinoids in terms of, as you mentioned, the ECS and localized effects. Could you maybe expand a bit more on why that matters for pain treatments, especially?
Absolutely. So I think bioavailability is extremely important because, again, if you can do more with less, the pressure on the other, like the how it's metabolized in the body, the effect on the liver, all these things come into play as you increase dosage because you're trying to gain efficacy, but you're like kind of brute forcing. Now, if you can allow for efficacy, for example, nanoemulsified, right? Nanoemulsified cannabinoids that we used in the gummy that we have in the US and now in Brazil allows for quick onset. And now that innovation, to be honest, came from the recreational industry, right? So in the recreational industry, taking a gummy and then figuring out when it's going to kick in was a huge pain point because you took it when you wanted to enjoy it legally, and then you went on to do the next thing they were supposed to do, and that's when it kicked in and kind of ruined your day a little bit, or it was just not an intended effect. So the nano-emulsified emulsification allowed it to begin to be absorbed sublingually, which allowed a quick onset. And from a market perspective, consumers were willing to pay 30 to 40% more for that. And we saw that if we were to provide, this is subject to obviously much larger trials, we're supposed to provide a equivalent to NSAIDs in some way for dysmenorrhea, for any ailment, we have to have that quick onset. Women have pain now. They don't have pain that they want to take something now that will solve it in 30 minutes. So one of the biggest issues with polyherbal microdose or even, alternative medicine has been the slow onset. So we were able to solve that with nanoemulsifying. And then again, I think that's from the experience point of view, but from the overall effect, and again, from the effect on the, I wouldn't call it a side effect, but the impact on the liver and stuff like that, I think bioavailability with a lower quantity with higher bioavailability would do the trick, because it still gets broken down whether or not it's absorbed in terms of efficacy, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, you talked about the new the VER drug that got approved by FDA, right? Overall, what do you see Schedule 3 as having the impact? Do you think it's just paperwork, or do you think it's going to be a game changer?
I think it's going to be, clearly this data and these guys have been doing these trials without Schedule 3, right? And Schedule 3 allowed the FDA to say yes. I don't think they just submitted it yesterday and it got approved in a week. They probably submitted a long time ago, but the FDA's hands were tied with cannabis because it's federally illegal. And polyherbal even more, right? Polymolecule even more. It was basically, they were treated like weed. CBD was single molecule, non-intoxicating from hemp. So it was easier for the FDA to approve after 20 years, Epidiolex. But here now, it's a flip switch, I would say.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, that is all of our questions today. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, I think we're in a moment now where a lot of the bets we made from real world data and anecdotal data can actually now be proven. Some of them will be nonsense, we know, right? Some of the anecdotal stuff will be nonsense, we know. But we have the ability to prove that they're nonsense. And at the same time, the flip side is the 4 or 5 that come out that are actually efficacious and path-breaking in terms of therapy will become world leaders. So we'll see now a breed of medical cannabis companies that are not offshoots of the big, the big 800-pound gorillas. They'll be smaller and more nimble companies that are able to produce reliable data, ailment-based data, take it through clinical validation, focus on single ailments, maybe 2. You're not going to find people with 200 products because that's impossible, at least not at the start. So I think you'll see certain ailments, I'd say epilepsy or cancer pain, whatever else that's sorely missing alternatives to, and you'll see innovations by smaller, much more nimble companies. I think phase 2 is going to be all about data and efficacy measurement, about optimization of formulations, about computational trials, about getting to the regulator the largest amount of reliable data that you can.
Thank you so much, Abhishek.
Good speaking to you guys always.
Sure.
Great speaking to you.